Good morning, Bay School. Great to see you all. It is Friday. Welcome to the end of the week. We hope you feel accomplished. Whatever you've done this week, you've gotten some good things done. Good luck with the various quizzes today that I've overheard you talking about. Morning meeting has come. One of my favorite things about morning meeting is the range and variety of topics. And all I'll share as I welcome Craig Butz to the floor here is my curiosity is, if you Googled how to train a hummingbird, what would we find out?
Good morning, everybody. Hope you've had a wonderful weekend. You're going to have a wonderful weekend. I hope you had a wonderful week. I am going to talk to you today about making friends with the littlest dinosaurs. I'm guessing that most of you by this point have heard that birds are dinosaurs. They are the only dinosaurs that survived the great meteor impact. And so the dinosaur skeleton that you see on the screen is from a creature that's often seen flying around the Presidio, a hummingbird. So I've always thought hummingbirds were neat. When I was in high school, we had a hummingbird feeder outside the kitchen window, and you could watch them while you were doing dishes. And I remember one time, like, going out on the ladder and changing the juice in the feeder, and them just like coming up, and I realized if I just sat still, they would like come and eat out of the feeder right in front of me, which I thought was really neat. But I didn't give hummingbirds a lot of thought until 2020. When we were in remote school, I ended up driving to a much less crowded place than San Francisco, my home in North Carolina. And when the weather warmed up, I put up a feeder to keep myself occupied, and soon I decided to start taking pictures of the hummingbirds. So this is the first photo I took in North Carolina of a hummingbird, and it is a bad picture, but it was good enough to encourage me to try harder and see what I could do. So as you can see here, it is hard to take a good photo of a hummingbird. And I could probably give you an hour-long lecture on all the technical photography stuff I learned in this project, but I've learned other things in the journey too, and I kind of wanted to share those and mix them in and not talk for an hour. So while I was figuring out how to take better photos, I spent a lot of time around the hummingbirds. And I realized I think I'm drawn to hummingbirds because they have this interesting blend of both being really cautious and fearless, which is something I kind of identify with. They're easily startled away, but they'll also come right up to your face or fly inches away from you while chasing another hummingbird. So here is my ridiculous setup. One ridiculous setup I tried for taking pictures of the hummingbirds. The camera's actually behind the feeder, and I have like a remote control. And I realized, part of what I learned was like how much patience pays off. So during lockdown, since I was on the East Coast, school didn't actually start till noon, which was nice. And I could get up and go out on my deck with the sun shining, on the hummingbird feeder and just like wait for them and take pictures. Hummingbirds eat a lot. They have a very high metabolism. Their heart beats 1,200 times a minute. And they have to have a meal to fuel that. They're like furious flapping of their wings. They have to have a meal about every 15 minutes. If you scaled a hummingbird up to human size, it would have to eat the equivalent of 35 pounds of bugs every day. And drink 5 gallons of nectar that is twice as sweet as soda. So they're eating constantly. They also can't fly in the dark. They don't really have night vision. So they actually hibernate every night so that they don't die of starvation. So like waiting for the hummingbirds to come every few minutes, and trying to get a good picture was kind of like a very slow version of an addictive phone game. You know, the game where you have a round and you like don't quite get as many points as you wanted to, and you're like, oh, I'll just do it one more time. And then you like get a good score, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna do it one more time, because you just keep getting that dopamine hit. It was like a very slow version of that. Like I would sit there very still, and the hummingbirds would come by, and I would like miss the shot. And I'd be like, oh, if I just wait a few more minutes, they'll be back. And in this picture, everything's covered in towels because I'm just trying to fill the scene with light to get a good picture. As you can see, you need a lot of light. It's easy to attract hummingbirds, but very hard to get a good photo. So they're so small and they move so fast, you have to get really close, you have to use camera settings that make getting them in frame and in focus really challenging. So another piece of this was just like realizing like how much you can improve through experimentation and problem solving. It pays off. This is a rig that I tried out where I had attached a ruler to the lens so that the feeder would be right in the right place and they would come to the exact right distance. And then what often happened was they would sit on the cards that were there to like add light instead of going where the camera was. And even when you get them in the right place and in the right light, they aren't inclined to pose for you. You have no control of where their wings are going to be when you hit the shutter. But sometimes they do pose well. And if you spend time watching them, you begin to realize that it's not just one bird that keeps coming back. And it's not a different bird every time. It's like a handful of individuals that live in your neighborhood. And I began to recognize the patterns in their feathers, and also noticed that the different ones had kind of different personalities, and began to be able to tell them apart. And I really realized that these creatures have their own personalities and preferences. There's always like one that's really bossy and will chase all the other ones away. Sometimes there's a sneaky one that knows how to sit really still so they don't get noticed and chased away. Some of them chirp a lot. There's quiet ones. There's ones that like to sit on a perch if it's available, and other ones that'll hover right over it. And even if their feet touch it, they'll like jerk up. There's ones that fly in from above and ones that kind of come in underneath and like pop up. You'll have one that guzzles long drinks of the sugar water, and ones that like to take little sips and like back off and check to see if anybody else is around. I realized that they are whole complex creatures, unique individuals, and they're only the size of your thumb. So there's this irony, which is that to see something that lives so fast, I had to slow down. So when I got back to San Francisco in 2021, I got a little obsessed with getting the most detailed pictures I could to see them up close. And I bought this industrial LED warehouse lamp to light them up. And I bought a vintage macro lens so that I could shoot from like only a few inches away, and I was shooting through my bedroom window. And I was patient, and I took lots of pictures, probably thousands of pictures. And I kept practicing to see just how close I could get. And this, when I saw this picture, I was like, oh my God, they have little feather eyelashes. And you can see that they have brown eyes, and the reflection of the feeder and the light and the sun in the window that I was looking through. And I also just started to realize as I was going about my everyday life that there are hummingbirds all over the city. And I'm now like super aware of them and tuned into the sounds they make. Let me see if let me play a little sound for you. You should listen to this. That's the sound of an Anna's hummingbird probably defending its territory and chasing somebody else away. And you start to kind of understand their language, that they have different chirps for different purposes. So once I kind of hit the limit of what my camera could do, I just spent more time watching them. And the ones that you share space with kind of get used to you. So my office mate Kyle and I have feeders on our office windows over in the project center. And here is Kyle with a contraption that we put together to get them to come right up to our faces, like a face shield with a suction cup feeder. And if you're patient and still enough, they're happy to eat from your hand. So here's see if it works, a little slow-mo, part slow-mo, part normal speed video. It looks like it speeds up to super fast, but that's how fast they move. He's a little cautious. Not inclined to stay in the frame. Okay. So while they visit, I sometimes wonder what they're thinking. It's hard to imagine what they think of me. So sometimes they will come up and look you in the face, and it really seems like they're aware that I'm a living creature. Do they think of me as some very slow-moving giant? And it's tempting to think that they're being friendly, but hummingbirds do not make friends with each other. They fight fiercely, and they're not social creatures like humans. I don't think friendship is a hummingbird concept at all. So when they come up and check you out, maybe they're just being curious, which is something that I really appreciate. But when they visit, I can't help but thinking of them as my smallest friends, even if they are dinosaurs. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Craig. That was beautiful. Craig's reminding us of so many important things. I don't know about you, but most of the time I walk through places, I don't see half the stuff, right? I just see what I'm used to seeing. And I used to take my students on a 45-minute, yes, 45-minute, mindfulness walk. And they would always come back saying, I never noticed, was that always there? And it's like, yeah, that was always there. You think of all the things you don't see because you don't pay attention, right? Our lives are so busy being the little hummingbird, right? What happens if we slow down? And I think Craig's talk really helped us to see the beauty that we may be missing when we don't slow down.